Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video, and today we are going to be doing a pretty different type of video. So, if you haven't seen on Twitter already, EA themselves, well, Codemasters, they have announced that the 2023 qualifiers for F1 Esports is up and running, and everybody pretty much has a chance to qualify. And I thought to myself, since I never really participated in any type of esports, I thought, let's have a go at this myself. So, this is pretty much my first time ever trying to qualify in F1 esports. So as you see here in the background, I'm just going through my setups, and yeah, so this is going to be my first ever run really trying out qualifying. So obviously at the start I had the driver difficulty in 93 just to see how it is, because that's what I normally play on. But then obviously, if you haven't seen what other people have been saying about the AI, even at the start of the game, really, it's just been pretty OP. I don't know why. It's just compared to F1 2021, where I used to run like 98 level difficulty. Like this year, I just had to like lower it just to be able to be competitive, really. Like not too low, but then I had to like lower it to an amount where it's not too easy, but then lower it to an amount where it's just impossible. So yeah, as you see, in certain corners, I am kind of not really hitting the apex, but in my mind, I'm mostly just focused on catching up to Alonso. So as you see in the top left, the gap is just slowly going up, even though I'm trying to make time. Like even going into cops, I go a little bit off the line, but still keeping the car on track. And as you go into Maggots and Beckett's, this is the difficult thing, because if you take too much curb and go over for a bit, then you'll get a warning. Now the thing about F1 esports and what I've seen on YouTube and other qualifiers really is that you don't want to get too much warnings, otherwise it won't give you the maximum amount of points. Like obviously if you want to get a lot of points, then it really depends on your assists and also the difficulty on AI that you use. So if you have, for example, 110 AI, which is what mainly competitive esports players and just content creators use in general, like Timothy Marduk and Fiona Altmere and Lucas Blakely, for instance, yeah, they can manage on that because obviously they're quick drivers, so pretty light work for them. For me, however, I'm more of just a casual player who's more interested in the competitive type. Like, I'm just getting into esports, really. Like, I'm just trying to get into that competitive. But this game, overall, I mean, F1 22 hasn't really been much of a competitive, like, realistic type of feeling game. It's more of an arcade. But anyway, fast forward to lap 50, going into cops, and I just go wide. So I felt the car understand. So I wasn't really happy with this setup. So, yeah, as you see, I'm gaining time throughout Maggots and Beckett's, but as you see, looking at my steering wheel, I'm just turning in too much, and the car is pretty much understeering. You see in the bottom right that my tires were going off, so I had to keep that in mind. Fast forward to the final lap. This is pretty much, like I said at the start, my first attempt, so I pretty much lost a lot of time, and nor would you see the gap ahead, 4.45 seconds, and you see I try to cover for Verstappen, who immediately catched up and just got past him, so it wasn't really a good first attempt, and I just pretty much gave up. I just wanted to finish the whole thing just to have an idea of what it's like, so yeah. Anyway, Verstappen gets past. Carlos Sainz obviously wins the race because this is pretty much the 2022 British Grand Prix pretty much recreated in the game, and yeah, anyway, so that was my first attempt. 7th place, obviously not what I want to do, but yeah, so at that time, at least I had an understanding of what was going on and what I needed to do. So my first total amount of points, 92,064. So, I mean, if I pass, it wouldn't be that bad. But anyways, I go and change my setup here, and obviously I search up on YouTube. And I thought, let's try some different setups to try and make the car more comfortable, especially going into certain corners. So I go ahead and try this setup up. And I think this is more of a time trial type of setup at the same time, because the thing with F1 esports qualifiers is they mostly go on for like at least 5 to 6 laps. I don't think they've gone on for any more from what I remember seeing. But you pretty much need to put in 5 perfect time trial laps. Like literally, you have to get your head into the zone and make sure that every lap is perfect, every apex is hit perfectly, every time, every braking zone, you literally do it right, and you like have to calculate it right. So anyway, going into my second run, and I go on. This is my first time in the second run with a new setup, and so far I think it's pretty decent, but then it really depends. Anyway, going into the first corner. Now the thing is, I think I've noticed in certain corners, especially the first corner, sometimes I just slightly lift off, because obviously I wasn't really comfortable, because normally the car would spin out, because probably the previous setup which I've used in the past, but over time it was alright. Like, I don't usually lift, but anyways, going into this corner here, and you can see the car gets slidey and I just lose it and the car just instantly spins. So that was my first run with that setup, and I can already tell that I wasn't really happy with it. So I go back into the setup board and I just tweak it a little bit, because the car just, I mean, the car didn't really feel right. It's more snappy, and if you go on the throttle too early, then it just instantly spins just like that. So I changed up the suspension, I changed up the transmission, I changed up the brakes, I changed up the tire pressure especially. I think the tire pressure is more important, as if you do it too much, then it will just kind of mess it up. So I go and reduce it a little bit instead of doing it all the way. So this is pretty much my third run. And now that I've put on the new setup, in my head, I'm thinking this should be alright. So go around the start finish straight, and you can already see, just if you notice there a little bit, the car was almost like, it's just like getting a little snappy in a way. But yeah, besides that, into this corner I realized I have to try and hit the apex, but if you see on my wheel that I'm turning too much, but then in my head I'm just trying to focus, and literally, like, my mindset throughout this time, because I was playing this after midnight, let's just put this out here. But anyway, yeah, as you see here, look how much I'm turning, and I already get my first warning, which is not good. That's the thing that you want to avoid, because it will, I mean, just seeing that for me at the time, it was very off-putting, and also like, it was like stressful in a way, because I was really trying, like, going into cobs, I just took so much cob, and I already had my second warning, so I decided to just restart there, because that's the thing you want to do, just avoid, just to get as much points as possible. And yeah, so I mean, I have restarted this a couple of times, because you just want to get this right, but my main focus is to just try and catch up to Alonso, because that was already difficult enough. So even before that, I had to go back and lower the AI difficulty, and already there you can see I've got my first warning, and you see I've taken too much of the curb and the car just got a little bit out of shape. So at that point I was literally frustrated, and you can see at some point I was just driving out of anger, because I was trying to just catch up and just try and gain as much time in a way which is fair. And to just, at the same time, I was more understanding how to, especially like these two turns here, I always, for some reason, even in career mode, I just lose time. And yeah, that's probably one of the weak points in the circuit that I have to deal with, for me personally. And yeah, keeping the car on track. Obviously, we've got to keep in mind that this is strict corner cutting, so, and see, I got a 3-second time penalty. And there, I just gave up. Like, at that point, I was just like so frustrated. So at that time, I took a break, and then we back into another turn. So I had to lower the AI difficulty a little bit, just so it was too much. So instead of it being on 90 feet, I lowered it to like 85. So because previous time I kept lowering it like two at a time, and here, as you see, I had another track limit warning. But as you see now on this run, I am pretty much under a second to Alonso, which is pretty much the closest which I've been throughout the whole time, over and over and over, trying to catch up. So I'm pretty much taking baby steps, step by step, trying, because the amount, like, I've literally spent like 2 hours trying on this run over and over and over. Like, that's how long overall it took. But this is the closest I've caught up to Alonso. So we've got to keep in mind, a 131.9, obviously, esports runners, they do like 129s and all that, 130s. So to me, I didn't really care like about putting in like 129s or stuff, because I'm not that fast. I'll put my hands up and say that I'm not that fast. I'm not no esports god. I'm literally just a casual player wanting to go. But anyways, DRS open and we get past pretty much into this corner, around the outside of Fernando Alonso, understeering a little bit, but keeping the car on track and getting past him pretty smoothly. And we have set a purple sector 1 as well, which is pretty much as soon as I passed Alonso, that's when my motivation got up and I was pretty much more confident. Now, heading into Magnus and Beckett's, catching up to Lewis Hamilton, pretty much 3 tenths behind him, DRS open. So this was pretty much the closest I've ever been to Hamilton, and I was pretty hyped. So anyway, absolutely send it into this corner, and I thought I got past, but I didn't. So Hamilton was still alongside me, but I just pushed him off the track. That was just a bit of a cheeky move from me, and I was up into 4th place. So in my head, I could easily just be like, okay, let's just maintain 4th place and just bring the car home. But me, I was more focused on the points and getting as much points as possible, and of course setting the fastest lap. So 2 laps ago, I already had the fastest lap, and my main focus right now, because obviously you got to keep in mind that this is in real life. So Leclerc was on hard tyres, old hard tyres, and the rest of the grid was on new tyres if you haven't watched the British Grand Prix in 2022. So Leclerc is pretty much going to be slow on the hards and we're all on soft. So it was a pretty easy path. I just have to be under the 1 second range. So I wanted to at least try and overtake these 2 up ahead, and I wasn't going to back down because I was more focused on maximizing as much points as possible and just finishing this. Because at this time of the night, this is the closest I've ever done to almost finishing it. And going into cops, I understood a little bit, like the car just wasn't like going in. But anyway, through Max and Beckett's, trying to make sure to keep the car on the track, of course, but not take too much of the curb because I didn't want to get another warning. But at the same time, if you mess up at least one bit of Maggott or Beckett's, then you just lose time and everything will go under the bin. And yeah, that is not really what I wanted to do. So anyways, going into the corner, just late on the brakes because I'm trying to just catch up. And all you see, I'm 4 tenths behind Charles Leclerc. Going into the final 2 corners, pretty much right behind these 2, and there's a battle for 2nd place. So all I had to do with 2 laps to go, now going into start finish at 1 lap to go, catch up to Leclerc, try and get past him, and also catch to Sergio Perez. And yeah, pretty much. So through this corner, I was thinking, what do I do? So I decided to absolutely send it on Charles Leclerc, and I didn't really lose as much time here. But my main focus was to just get past these 2 as quickly as possible, because the one thing I didn't want to do is just get held up behind Charles Leclerc and Hamilton just catches up, and then he's in DRS range and I'm just a sitting duck. Because we've got to keep in mind, my ERS, let's just point out, my ERS is 18%. So the thing about esports, and especially the qualifiers, is that you literally need to maintain and pretty much have as much ERS as possible, because it goes down quick. And when I tell you it goes down quick, as in, let's say you have 70% at the start of the straight, and then literally next thing you know you have 30. But anyway, through cops that you can see, I already had a 3-second time penalty from the amount of warnings, and I just carried on because I was, as soon as I saw that I was just like, fuck's sake. Like, I was so annoyed because that was the closest I've been. But yeah, DRS range, we get past Sergio Perez. So in my head, I'm thinking, fuck it, we're going to go to the end, and I'm going to try, even though it's not likely possible, to try and get a 3-second gap. Because in that point, I was like, okay, 3-second gap. And yeah, I just decided, you know what, there was no point. So, I mean, I did finish that. And then, yeah, I didn't end up. So, starting again, as you see, going into the start finish straight, at that corner, I was just getting a little bit slidey, having a bit of a slidey exit. So, yeah. I don't actually know how many, I don't know what run we're on here, but because I restarted this a couple times. I went back to the drawing board and just tweaked the setup a bit, just trying to be comfortable with the car really. And now, as you see here, I lowered the AI difficulty. Like, over time, I was just lowering the AI difficulty lower and lower, but not too low to the point where it's easy, because if you see in the leaderboard, you see people getting like over 100k points with like 30 level AI or 50. Me, I put it here on at least 79. Like, I was going low and low all the time. Like, at this point, like, I didn't really want to have to do this. The AI was just too OP. But I didn't want to do this to the point where it's so easy for me. I wanted to do this. I wanted to obviously have myself a challenge, because I didn't want the AI to be too easy. I wanted to give myself a challenge and catch up and work on like my raw race pace, because I guess that's my weak point, especially because if I'm used to playing career mode, not really much online no more. So yeah. Anyways, we got past Alonso pretty much before lap 49, and now my main focus is to catch up to Hamilton, who is only 1.7 seconds up the road. And yeah, so far so good for me. And yeah, pretty much. So my main point is, for me at least, I need to try and just make sure I just reduce the amount of warnings and just keep the car on track, nail every corner as quickly as possible. But we have DRS, and at my point, I was thinking, am I going to send it or am I not? I chose not to, because obviously I was far back. So I did catch up to Hamilton, and here I was thinking, if I just had enough grip and enough run, I could try and overtake Hamilton around the outside. But it didn't really matter, because I just overtook Hamilton here as we go side by side into the cops. And I was thinking, is he going to back out? Is he not? I'm going to send it. So I eventually get past Hamilton, and I'm surprised that Hamilton backed out there, because to be honest, the AI, they are a bit quite aggressive. So realistically, I thought Hamilton was just going to keep fighting back and go alongside. But anyways, fast forward into lap 51, and we're pretty much at the same scenario as we was the previous attempt. So one more lap to go, and as you see, I get more traction than Charles Leclerc, despite having a bit of a slidey exit. I eventually did get past Charles Leclerc pretty much before the start finish straight, and then Leclerc tries to get past. We try and just squish the gap, and Leclerc obviously backs out, and look how far he is already. So now that that's going on, final lap running, and that's pretty much it. So this is pretty much, I just want to point out here, this is my best run, and pretty much the only run which actually went well for me, because this took so long. So anyway, final lap. This is pretty much the best I've been. I don't have to worry about Charles Leclerc and Hamilton as they're a second behind. So it's pretty much me versus Perez in our own world, really, in our own track. So I go round the outside of Sergio Perez, and I just have enough grip, and we do get past. And all I had to do is to try and save as much ERS as possible and cover off Perez. But as you see, Perez having that straight line speed, and he tries to make the move into Cobbs, and he eventually does as we go side by side. And Perez just has that speed, that raw speed and traction. So obviously we've got to keep in mind that this is the Red Bull that we're talking about, the best car that year. And yeah, I didn't really have much ERS, but luckily I was in DRS range, so I didn't have to worry, because I was able to just get past. So I did eventually get past, made sure I got past, and try and defend as much as possible with 3 more corners to go. And at this point, I was relieved. I had like, right now, 2 more corners, had the fastest lap, pretty much good to go. Carlos Sainz obviously wins the race. We come home in 2nd place as Lando Norris, and at that point, I was just relieved. As Kimi Raikkonen once said in the USA 2018, obviously the US Grand Prix, fucking finally. And that was pretty much me right now. Sebastian Vettel getting driver of the day, and I was just glad that that was over, because I was just, at that point, I was driving so, like, we're full of anger and just frustration. But anyways, we passed the objective, and we have 93,517 points. And that was actually quite higher than my previous attempt. So I honestly thought I was going to get at least 95,000. But I mean, it is what it is. But I don't really care. I was more happy that I passed. And then I go straight to the leaderboard just to see where I was, because I was realistically expecting myself to be at least in the top 500. But as with a surprise with that, I was in the top 300, 288 in the leaderboard at the time. So yeah, that was my run. So yeah, anyways, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and feel free to try yourself, and I will see you a lot later.